Good afternoon, Roosevelt community. My name is Latoya Lang, Deputy Chair of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion here at Roosevelt University. This month, we celebrate Black History Month, a chance to remember and honor the contributions that African Americans have made towards building our nation. It also offers us a chance to think about which we are and where we are to where we hope to be in the future. Our journey to equity is not complete. Roosevelt is committed to playing an important role in advancing diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Today's event is hosted by the Diversity Network, a new group at Roosevelt University that aims to educate, support, and connect our alumni community and beyond. The Diversity Network celebrates what makes RU such a vibrant place while promoting equity, diversity, and inclusion to make sure that everyone feels like they belong. I thank them for hosting today's panel discussion. I'm also honored to share that Roosevelt has established the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. The new office will lead meaningful initiatives within the university. The office will be championing diversity efforts, providing greater visibility to the meaningful work that already exists here at Roosevelt and building on those successes. We will work with faculty, staff, students, and alumni to ensure that the values and mission of the office will be embedded across all areas of the university, including academics, programming, fundraising, policies, and in procedures. As we work to develop this office, we believe it is critical to include the voices and opinions of the Roosevelt community along the way. And to that end, please do keep an eye out for additional information on how you can get involved and help push the mission of the university forward. It's a pleasure to be here and to welcome you to the Nonprofit Leaders on How You Can Make an Impact discussion. Today, our guests will talk about how their organizations mobilize the community for change. They will take a deeper look at recent racial justice issues and share how you can make an impact. Since Roosevelt University's founding in 1945, African American students, faculty, and alumni have pioneered the way in social justice and inclusion. Today's guests are no exception. They are an inspiring group of local nonprofit leaders and valued members to the Roosevelt community. Now I'd like to introduce our moderator, Sharon Bush. Sharon has over 20 years of nonprofit and business experience. She is currently the president of the Grand Victoria Foundation and is the second person to lead the foundation in its 20-year history. Shannon is on the board of ABFE, a national philanthropic organization that advocates for responsive and transformative investments in Black communities. She also serves on the board of African and American Legacy at the Chicago Community Trust. Sharon is an advisor to Willie's Warriors, a leadership development initiative of the Chicago Foundation for Women, and to Greater Good Studio. She is also a Roosevelt alumna and trustee. Sharon, it's an honor to have you here today. Thank you so much for leading an important conversation.
Thanks, Latoya. It's really a privilege to be here, and I think we'll have a little bit of fun to kick off our Black History Month activities. So to get us started, I'm going to introduce this fabulous panel that we have, and really what we have is a great roster of Roosevelt University champions. So with that, I'll start with Valerie Barker Waller. She is the Senior Vice President and Chief Communications Officer for YMCA of the USA. She is also my colleague on the Roosevelt University Board of Trustees. Her work really is about identifying and creating opportunities to build the WISE brand equity. Next up, we have Dr. Marlin Haywood. He is the Director of Neighborhood and Community Impact at Volunteers of America, and he has a particular interest in being a positive source of change in the lives of young men of color. He founded the Urban Male Network, and he too is a Roosevelt alum. He earned his doctorate of educational leadership from the university. And last but not least, we have Jessica Holly. And Jessica is the Chief People Officer of NAMI Chicago. And NAMI supports families and individuals that are impacted by mental health conditions. And Jessica earned her bachelor's and her master's degree from Roosevelt. So with these great people, we're going to just jump right into the conversation. And we'll just start off with maybe hearing a little bit more about your background. So if you could just tell me or tell us, the audience, like how you really developed your sense of purpose and how that connects to your nonprofit leadership. And we'll start with Valerie.
Hi, everyone. Great to be with you, and really excited about the panel. I came into this nonprofit space after many years in the for-profit space, and I had been a volunteer at the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago, where many of you are probably familiar. You remember going on your school field trip and spending many a rainy day at that museum. I had the opportunity to join the leadership team there and be the first ever vice president of marketing and PR. And so that was my first foray into the nonprofit space. And what I came to understand about the nonprofit space is, truly nonprofit is a tax status. And the work that organizations all across this country are doing who have that nonprofit tag are doing real work. They're addressing real needs, whether they be in communities or with specific constituents. They're contributing to the economy, just as for-profit companies do, employing people and really making an impact. And so I've had the good fortune to spend much of my kind of later career in this nonprofit space, whether it was helping with a civic opportunity for the city of Chicago or working at United Way and making sure that the funding that is really needed to help our communities was flowing to do such, or now working with one of the world's leading brands that is focused on strengthening communities. So I've had a great opportunity to do that and love this opportunity to contribute my skills and experience to something that makes a major impact in this country.
That was a great kickoff. I think I'm going to ask Marlin to follow up because I think you'll be able to follow up that great bio just as great as we got started. So
yes, Valerie, I definitely enjoyed hearing your story. For me, I was born and raised in Inglewood on the south side of Chicago. And I just remember going to school and having to actually go outside of the community to go to school, right? For grammar school, for high school, for everything that I did, even to go shopping. And, I would go past abandoned buildings, vacant parking lots. And it can definitely be disappointing and also depressing, right? When you look around your neighborhood and the only type of store that you see is a liquor store. And I remember right up the street, we had Rothschild's, and then we had the fast food, hoagie place that was there. But that was about it. And so for me, I remember this man, and I never forgot it, that he said to me when I was young. He said, "You are the change that you have been looking for." And that always stuck with me. So, when I got into college, I joined a male mentorship organization called Black Male Initiative. I got very involved with the Center for Black Studies, where we would go to the local elementary school and where we would mentor. And I didn't think that mentoring and volunteering made that big of a difference. But I saw the change in the kids and the youth that we were working with. And it really inspired and it motivated me to where I was like, I want to do something like this full time. How can I do more of this when I graduate? And I found out that there was opportunities to work, to do, to make more of an impact in the community. And I did not know, and this is also speaks to how within our community, our kids, our youth, a lot of times do not know about the opportunities, the careers that are out there, because even growing up, I didn't know that there was an opportunity or a career field that you can go into serving the community. I always heard about just specific ones. And so for me, as I got more involved in the community and as I started volunteering, and when I graduated college, I saw that there was a need that needed to be met. And for me, I just was like, what can I do? And so it started with just mentoring just a few young men, and then it grew. That's how I ended up starting, Urban Male Network. Not to go into the long story of that, but it was just starting with just a few. And then I was consistent. And in being consistent, I saw it grew, and I saw the development. I saw the change in the young men that I was working with. And then from there, just being involved and volunteering, I wanted to help more people because I saw that there was a need with seniors. I saw that there was a need for people when it came to wanting to buy more housing, right, or to want to buy a house. And I was like, how can I make this change? How can I make this development? And that is how I got to the place of being now with, I would say, Volunteers of America, is because I wanted to come back to my community because I see the focus that they have in making that change. And that's kind of how I got to it. Again, without trying to go the long story, but just wanted to make a difference, wanted to make a change and be the change that I always wanted to see growing up in my community.
Thanks for that. I mean, I think your experience probably resonates with many. So it's really nice to actually hear you describe that journey a bit. Jessica, tell us more about your sense of purpose and how it relates to your work.
Definitely. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everybody. The seed of service was really planted by my grandmother. I can remember volunteering as a child for Little Brothers of the Elderly, where we would go and serve holiday dinners for the senior community. I remember my very first civic action volunteering on Mayor Washington's first mayoral campaign. Can you believe that? And so, being able to have those experiences and seeing her being modest in financial resources, but really rich in compassion, led me to wanting to continue those experiences. So even as an adult, I continue to volunteer. If it's at a local church food pantry, or if it's showing returning citizens how to get ready for jobs, I just continue that path. And what I have found over the 22 years now that I've been in HR is that I flourish the best serving and supporting those on the front lines in nonprofit organizations, because those individuals are working to ensure that those that are marginalized or underrepresented have a voice. And that's very rewarding for me. And I can't imagine anything more special than being that support.
I mean, I think you guys are hitting on a lot of themes that are relevant to this next question, because we are in a really interesting historical moment, being in the middle of a pandemic. People are calling it a once in a generation thing, but this hasn't happened for many generations, right? And we're also in a different generational moment around racial justice. And so if you guys can just talk about how these things have affected your constituents, like you guys just talked about voice, mentoring, the real work that nonprofits do and don't always get credit for it. How have these things affected your constituents and the issues that each of your organizations addresses? Let's start with Marlin.
All right. So when I look at just the issues, one of the things that Volunteers of America is doing that I love is tackling the housing crisis. So we look at within Inglewood. Inglewood has the most vacant available lots in the city of Chicago. And one of the things that statistics shows is that when you have more home ownership in the community, that it helps to change the whole dynamic, right, of the community and the people in the field. And one of the things that we have done is to develop more housing, affordable housing within the Inglewood community. And we're looking to see how we can now have more minority home ownership. Most recently, we have done a development that took place in the last 2 to 3 years, Hope Manor 2, where we house veterans and their families, and also just affordable housing that we offer is called Hope Manor Village. So we have Hope Manor 2 for the veterans and their families. Then we have the Hope Manor Village, which is in the community, in the vicinity of that building that was built, that are 1-story, two-story buildings where individuals and their families can stay there as well. The next thing that we've been working on, and an initiative that I've been leading, is how do we tackle food insecurity when it comes to now bringing in community health workers and training individuals from the community to help educate people on how to eat healthy, how to work out, how to be more fit. Because when we look at the pandemic, it hit our communities, the African-American community, the hardest, because there was already previous health issues, right, that had to be addressed. So when you're looking at diabetes, when you're looking at obesity, right, that has already been there. So these are things that we're working on to get more people within our community to be more healthy, to be more fit, and then also looking at the housing that can be more available to people that is affordable within the community as well. And from there.
Thank you for that. Jessica, I imagine like being where you are, that these are things you think about all the time. So like how have these things affected the issues that you guys work on at NAMI or the constituency there?
Definitely. Well, physical and psychological safety are everything, right? And I think those have been put to the test with not only the pandemic, but also with the racial injustices and civil unrest that we've seen over the last couple of years that's sort of been highlighted. And because of that, we've had an extraordinary amount of support that we've had to provide to the mental health community. Part of the cornerstone of what we do is we have a helpline, so individuals will call in for resources and support. Sometimes it's very simple, requests. Maybe they're looking for a new therapist or housing. Maybe they want a new location, and then sometimes individuals are in crises. But we saw certainly a significant increase in those calls, and so what we've done, we've just made sure that we show up when they need us in any way that we can to make sure we provide that support. Internally, though, we also make sure that we are supporting our teammates because they're on the front lines working every day with individuals that are possibly in crisis or just struggling momentarily. And so it's really important for us. Internally, we have a wellness department as well as the people experience department, which is our HR department. We work collaboratively to make sure that we are always checking in on our team, making sure that we're advocating for their self-care, giving them room and space to reset, take time off, do whatever it is they need to do to care for themselves first, so they can continue the battle or the good fight in terms of being able to show up for the mental health community.
I think we forget about the folks who actually are doing the work and the care and nurturing that they need to continue to help others. So it's really great to hear you bring that up. You guys are like really honing in on very different aspects. And so, Valerie, how has this affected the work at the Y? Like, this is a place where people gather, and people weren't able to do that for a while. And then, if we are we gathering only in our own groups because everybody's mad at each other? How is this affecting your work?
No, that's a really fantastic question. And just, for a little bit of background and anchoring, right? I'm at the national headquarters for the Y. The Y is 800 different 501c3s that together have, 2,600 physical facilities and do programs in, schools and senior centers, kind of beyond those facilities that they do programs in. And so we are in, as our colleagues in the government affairs area say, we're in red states, blue states, and purple states.
Right.
We serve in urban areas, we serve in suburban areas, and we serve in very rural areas. And so when you think about the landscape of America, that landscape of America is what the Y is attempting to cover and address. And, through the pandemic and the social unrest and all that we've seen over the last couple of years, there's been a lot of challenge in this country, right? There are kids who, when schools closed, don't have breakfast or lunch. And so the Y has stepped in and made sure that that the Y was the place that the kids could come for breakfast and lunch, which could potentially be the only meals of their day. We stepped in when, again, schools were closed and people were being asked to monitor their kids with online school in a couple of different ways, right? Made sure that we had, virtual learning facilities in place with internet and staff members. Because imagine you are a police officer. You can't take your kid to work with you for them to do their homework and connect on their computer riding in the back of a squad car. You can't do that if you are a nurse in a hospital in an emergency room. So we met, the community needs in a variety of ways. There are tons of seniors in this country who live by themselves, and the social isolation of 2 years worth of a pandemic is an incredible thing for them to manage through. So we've spent time checking in on seniors all over the country, making sure that they had what they needed, had the resources they needed. You saw many of visual on the news of food drives and food giveaways. We did that in communities because Many of the folks in our communities were without a job or had decreased hours that changed their financial circumstances, and they couldn't make ends meet. So the Y has had the great chance to kind of do its important work and step into that space as it always has, but in a much bigger way because the need's been bigger. Additionally, the kind of civil and social unrest is really an interesting one, right? Because the Y is a place that's for all. And so we are focused on making sure that we can have people with differing opinions, differing points of view from different generations kind of all come together and develop common understanding, common language. And so that's a space that, given the circumstances of the last couple of years, we've doubled down on. We've tried to be sure we were the place that had no political agenda, not no political TV actually on the monitors where your treadmill is, right? Let's be sure that we are not doing anything other than creating an opportunity for folks who may have different opinions, different thoughts, different views to come together. So plenty of work in this space and really important work that is ongoing, including, to Jessica's great point, the care and focus on the staff members that support all of this, right? There's 250,000 Y staff members across the country. They are members of the community and they are dealing with the civil unrest and social kind of things that are going on. They are dealing with family members with COVID. They are like all of those things are important for us to think about, not only for the communities and the constituents we serve, but for those of us who serve them.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think these are like really big shifts, right, that we're trying to address in terms of addressing the pandemic, in terms of addressing a new and evolved social and racial justice moment in the country. And really, so much of the work that we talk about when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion is to think about how do we do this work ourselves in order for us to like do this work outside of our four walls in our organizations, right? So maybe you guys could talk about how your organizations build DEI into your operations. And maybe we can end like, about advice for others, but maybe we'll just start with the first part of the question. Jessica, you are the Chief People Officer. So let's start with you. Like, how do you think about these things? Because you guys are all actually working too at larger organizations where you have an opportunity to do this differently and at a different scale than others in the nonprofit sector.
Sure. First and foremost, I think we start out by acknowledging people come to us whole. They're not just coming to us as the title that they hold in the organization. So they're coming to us as parents, students, spouses, etc. And so we acknowledge that and we leave space for that and we recognize that. So if there's a need that they have to manage their whole self, we want to make sure that we provide that space. Secondly, I think the way we recruit, we cast a net that's far and wide. Anything from faith-based organizations to differently abled organizations, veterans, etc. If there are people out there looking for work and they're interested in serving the mental health community, we want to talk to them to see if it's something, if there's a fit and that they can come and join our mission to work and support the mental health community. And then thirdly, I think our leadership, our CEO has committed to diversity and inclusion work. In addition to that, we are working with a community partner to provide additional DEI resources so that we have a racial equity committee that's just started so we can continue to engage in that work. And then also, again, allowing space is such an interesting and important part of, I think, making sure that everybody feels included and that many voices are heard. And when I say allowing space, it may be anything from taking the time out from the town hall meeting to allow people to reflect. If there's a particular judgment, they may come in from a racially heightened police shooting to an individual that may feel like perhaps there's some more things that we can do or ideas that they have about how they identify can be further included in our workspace, if it's policies, applications, etc. So those are the types of things that we're doing because we want to not only have statements around diversity, equity, and inclusion, but really want to model what that means for us, and so that people do actually experience a sense of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So that's our approach now. We're not perfect. We try every day to get a little bit better, but I think we're doing a really good job of it now. We continue to strive towards that.
So, I mean, I'm sure that inclusion is particularly important, like within your organization, given the issues that you work on. And Valerie, you just talked about the why is for everybody. And you're working at an incredible scale too. So how do you guys think about operationalizing these issues?
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic question. And I think the Y was founded 175 years ago, for those that don't know, and to have a mission where the last two words are for all is really actually visionary, right? And allows us to kind of stand in the moment of what for all means right now. And I think that's incredibly valuable, right? That is our anchor to diversity, equity, and inclusion truly in this country. And, you know, again, as I described, right, red states, blue states, purple states, urban, suburban, rural, right, our kind of, you know, constituency, the communities we serve are just that, and our need to be sure we are truly in every community every day, living our mission and living the values that mission espouses, is what allows us to fully embrace that DEI strategy. You know, practically, right, we think about things that help for that, right? Do we have a diverse board of directors at the national level? And do we have diverse boards at the local level, 800 different local 501c3s? And how are they helping us to kind of live that mission and live our core values? What does staff representation look like across, you know, the broadest spectrum of diversity, right? We have a visual that's called a diversity wheel, and it allows everybody, just like Jessica said, to bring their full kind of spectrum of themselves to what diversity means, right? Because people are parents, people have, you know, chronic diseases, people have, like, there's a variety of things that are about what it means to be a diverse organization that brings great diverse thought to problems and questions that our society's facing. And it's not just racial diversity, which is what often is kind of the lip service or the visual, right? We have our first ever female CEO at the national headquarters, which is a fantastic and amazing thing for the Young Men's Christian Association. And she follows the first African-American CEO in the 175-year history of the organization. So I think at the top, we're really kind of talking the talk and walking the walk. And every day in every community, if we're not embracing what DEI means, we're not actually serving the communities in the way that we can and making the impact that we can. So I think as an organization, this is a critically important space for us and one that we fully embrace.
I mean, so picking up on that, Marlin, you have a very particular perspective on this, probably, right? Like you have a particular interest in thinking about the inclusion of young people, particularly young men of color. So like, what does this mean? Maybe you can choose either hat that you're wearing, the Urban Male Network hat or your Volunteers of Illinois hat, either, to think about, like, how do you think about this question of incorporating these values in your work or the structures of your organization?
Yeah, you know what? I start with Urban Male Network. It means a lot to me because, one, when I'm meeting with a lot of these young men, many of them often do not have an idea of what it is they want to do in life, right? A lot of them speak of never meeting anyone who looks like them in certain particular fields. I remember when I first got my doctoral degree, and the day after, I went out to eat with a group of my young men. And they stated and said, hey, I've never actually had an opportunity to sit down and meet personally a person who has a doctorate. This is my first time getting that opportunity. And they said to me and said, hey, if you can do it, then we can do it as well. And that meant so much to me to hear them say, hey, well, you just inspired and motivated me. That's why every opportunity that I have, I'm putting African American and Latino attorneys, doctors, people who are entrepreneurs to introduce them to various careers, because often they do not have that opportunity and they have never had the chance to meet them and talk to them. And when I look at where I am in life, it is because I had mentors who opened doors and introduced me to opportunities. Even now, for my doctoral degree, it was a Black man who said, "Hey, you're doing great work when it comes to mentoring young men. You're doing great work within the community. But if you want to go further in life, you need to have you need to get a doctorate to do it. Have you thought about that?" And I said, "Well, it crossed my mind, but I don't know if I'm ready to do it." He said, "You can start like this year." And so from there, he actually introduced me to people within at Roosevelt University. He made the call. He then took the opportunity to write the letter of recommendation for me, and here it is. And before I knew it, hey, I was in a doctoral program because he took the time to walk me through those steps to help me to figure it out. Even when it came for me doing my first fellowship at West University Medical Center, there was another Black man again that helped me and said, "Hey, have you ever thought about being a health disparities research fellow?" I was like, "I'm not qualified. I don't know anything about health disparities. I don't know anything about that." He said, "I didn't ask you. I just asked where you're interested. I just need somebody that's willing to learn, that want to be willing to go a step further." And I say, "I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to take the initiative." And before I knew it, he helped me, and I was able to get into that program. I was able to become a health disparities research fellow. So there was always individuals who opened up that door, who introduced me to a field that I knew nothing about. And that's why I say when it comes to diversity and inclusion and equity, it's so important that we open up those doors to help reach back to the people that are behind us. So from that work that I do, I think that that's definitely important.
You guys just really said a lot, right? Like it's all about the relationships. It's all about the structures that we put together, policies and practices. And you guys all touched on all of the pieces around like what does it mean to do this work, both at an individual level and at a systemic level to make sure that like it sticks, right? Like that's the thing. I think we'll like pivot a little bit. So this year's Black History Month theme is health and wellness. So maybe you guys can just tell us what that means to you. And maybe how does your work overlap with this theme? And the obvious person to go to talk about this is Jessica. Like we are in a place where mental health is getting talked about a lot. I know in that sector, people, it ebbs and flows. Like when there's crises, everybody wants to talk about mental health and they don't want to pay attention to it when it's not. But like here we are. So how do you think about that and how it intersects with Black communities?
Yeah. So for me, when I think about wellness in the Black community, to me, it's all rooted in equity. Um, because if we're able to live our lives and participate fully in life without the discrimination that's based on race and how people identify, gender, etc., individuals have the opportunity, in my opinion, um, to find wellness or be on the road to wellness. And so with work, it intersects really well because NAMI Chicago has a recovery model that's based off of the Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Administration work. But what's highlighted in that model is health, home, community, and purpose. But at the center of that is equity. And so that's how we work internally and externally. Um, when we when we reach out to the mental health community, we work really hard to make sure that we are covering all four corners of Chicago because, as we know, although we are a diverse city, we're very well segregated. And so we try to make sure that we are touching the south and west sides, which are heavily populated with African American constituents or citizens. But we use that model to ensure that we're not just talking solely from a medical standpoint, but really a holistic standpoint and how people can journey to wellness in a very complete way. And so for me, I think that's how I look at wellness and how it intersects with the work that I currently do and the organization that I currently support.
Great. Valerie, what do you think about this?
So, that's a very important area of impact for the Y, right? One of our three key areas of impact is in the healthy living space. And, our focus there is both individual and community health and well-being. And that's at the broadest sense, right? So for people to be healthy, kind of mind, body, spirit, right? Going all the way back to that mission is critical. And those people and communities help make a community healthy and strong and vibrant and thriving. There are so many challenges that we see in communities, and we've talked, about a few of them, right? So it is everything from, access to healthy foods and food deserts. It is access to healthcare. It is, the types of things that are leading to mental health challenges in our communities. And so this is a critically important space, and one that I think the pandemic has shined an even brighter light on. And so my hope is that there is much more of a focus on how we ensure, equity across all of our communities in our country, and through all of those aspects of individual and community health.
Marlin, what about you? Like, how are you thinking about health and wellness with your constituency?
Well, I look at the health of the whole person, right? So as Valerie stated, like when we look at the person's mind, the spirit, their body, how can we make sure, right, that that individual has the housing, that their housing needs are met, or when it comes to having a healthy diet, also that you are able to like make your weekly appointments or monthly appointments when it comes to the doctor visit. I think even helping our people understand that you don't just have to wait till it's time to go to the emergency room to see the doctor, right? Like you can actually be more consistent, and you can still have faith in God, and you can still have that belief that you will be healed, but still see a medical professional. And then even looking at it, I think one of with all of the bad that has happened with the pandemic, I would say the one good thing that I have seen is that within the Black community, we have embraced therapy. More people are now okay, right, with seeking out in seeking therapy, seeking counseling, because there's always in the past seemed like there's been a stigma that has been attached to it when it comes to seeking counseling. And people are like, I'm not crazy. I don't need to get help. But we have now been able to talk through, right, what issues that you're kind of dealing with. So for me, it's being well, completely, like all around, right, 360, mind, body, spirit, all of that. Like spiritually you're in a good place, physically you're working out, you feel good about your body, and then mentally, right, because we know living in Chicago, it can create PTSD, so post-traumatic stress disorder, and there are so many people that experience loss, whether it's due to COVID or now it's due to violence within your community. And so now, if we're just making sure that a person is whole and well and is in good spirits, and that is what that means to me when I think about it.
And you guys have made multiple references through the conversation about like taking care of like the whole person or bringing your whole selves into this work. And so I think that's a different or a new theme of talking about that. Like that's been a good outcome so far, as Dr. Haywood just said, from the pandemic. I think, it's such a challenging time, and I think people are feeling so overwhelmed. It could be hard to really think about how to mobilize and take positive action. So, like, can you guys maybe talk about how our audience really can do that? Like, how can they mobilize positive action in their communities? With or without a leadership title. We all have great fancy titles on this panel, but like often leadership comes in many, many different forms, as we know. So what would you guys say for the audience in that regard? Maybe we'll start with Marlin.
Sure. I would start. I would say that if you see a need in your community, or you see a need that is taking place, you don't have to say, you know what, I don't have a title, I don't have the resources. Sometimes just starting small with a small idea can grow into something big. For me, I just knew that I wanted to make a difference in the community mentoring youth and young men. I didn't know how I was going to do it. I didn't know where to start. I didn't have no money. I didn't have anything. But what I did is that I just put some flyers together, put it out there, went and talked to a few of the youth and said, hey, we're going to meet once a week at this location, and I'm going to pay for the food out of my pocket. And of course, they was like, okay, we'll come. And they came. And then from there, they started saying, well, can my friends come? Sure. And before I knew it, I went from like 3 to having 20 plus guys because they wanted to invite their friends. And then what happened is that the restaurant that we was meeting at, where I was spending my own money when I started to do this, was like, I really love what you're doing. I'm gonna go ahead and donate the food to you every week for these young men. And then the space that, we would do like the physical activities or the fun activities with the kids, they was like, you know what, we'll donate the rec gym for you. We'll donate the field. So what happened is that it started with just something that I wanted to do to make a difference. I didn't know how I was going to do it. I didn't have the resources. I didn't have the money. I didn't even have the connections at that time, but I just knew I had a passion and a purpose inside of me to say, I need to do something. And in doing that, before I knew it, then the connection started to come. The resources started to surround me because all I did was just, I felt like I was obedient to what was put down inside of me. And before I knew it, then a difference was made. And then I had all of the resources that I needed to continue to make that difference within the community and then with the young people that I was working with. So for me, just write the vision, right? Put it on paper, put it in your notepad, put it in your phone, and then begin to kind of say, you know what, get a few people to maybe help you, and then just start it. You don't have to wait a year. You don't have to wait 2 years, but just put that idea into motion, and you will be surprised at how a little idea can grow into something big and make a larger impact. Everything that we're doing right now in the world started with an idea in someone's head. Think about that. The chair that you're sitting in, the glasses that you have on your face, the clothes that you have on, the building that you are in, it started with an idea. And somebody thought, man, this is too big. But just start with it, and you never know where to go from there. And that's what I'm saying.
I think Dr. Haywood is the embodiment of be the change. Be the change that you want to see in the world. I don't, Valerie or Jessica, either of you want to jump in and kind of say, like, what would you guys advise for the audience about how to think about it?
Yeah, I think he's kind of given us a blueprint, and so I'll put a shameless plug in. Right, there's 2,600 physical locations around the country. Lots of whys. Go volunteer. Right, we have opportunities for people to do everything from mentor young people to work on food insecurity and help with food pantries to volunteer coaching a team where kids have an opportunity and an outlet and sometimes a path forward beyond what they're doing that day because they've been a part of a team and they've learned leadership skills and other things. So, you can, if you're an accountant, you can put your skills to work working on the board, right? There's a lot of ways that through the YMCA you can get involved and channel what is a passion for you towards making a true positive impact in communities. So, if it's not the why, find another place, organization, and nobody cares about your title. They care that you're walking in with, the passion and the focus on helping out in the community, and that's what it's really about.
Jessica, did you have any last words, or did they do a good enough job? What do you think?
They really did a good job. I would just say start the conversation. Talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors, your family. Once you have that conversation and get those ideas flowing, and then just move on those ideas and see where it takes you. All it takes is a single conversation, and you'd be surprised where you may end up.
So then, do you guys have any other final thoughts? Like, there might be some questions in the chat. If not, I have a couple of other questions that I can also go through. I think one last thing is, similar to what we just talked about, which is so much of like the world is so heavy. It's so heavy right now, right? And I talk about this with my team, like at Grand Victoria Foundation. I imagine you guys have these conversations with your families, within your organizations. And so it's easy to feel discouraged or disheartened by the quality of the discourse around these issues, how or whether we think or perceive how people are being involved in issues these days. Like, what are the things that keeps you guys hopeful and like keeps you going to like do this every day? Because these are conditions, working in isolation all the time that are very, very different to adapt to. Whether we should be doing that or not is a whole other debate. So, Jessica, what keeps you hopeful? Like, why are you getting up in the morning every day when you could just put your head under the covers?
I think for me, I know that the mission and the work that I'm supporting is a lot bigger than me. And I feel like if I can continue to support the team that's on the front lines, working so diligently to help people in their mental health journey, why not do that? I think that's the least of what I can do for my service here on this earth.
Valerie?
So, as a personal motto, I really think, to those who much has been given, much is expected. That is, why I have kind of taken the course of bringing my, kind of skills and talents to the nonprofit space and helping those organizations, just like I helped corporate America for years. I actually am hopeful because I think a bright light has been shined on a lot of things that have been kind of deep under and maybe not so deep under in this country. So when we look at, equity, and we look at health disparities, and we look at all of those things, like, COVID has shown us what that looks like. When we look at how those things impact, communities, especially Black and Brown communities, that's a big deal. When we think about the social injustice and racial tension, right? We've now got folks with iPhones that are kind of showing us what's happening in communities versus us hearing about it, or in many cases in the past, not hearing about it, right? So I'm hopeful. And I'm also hopeful that this next generation who sees this and says, this isn't the world I want to live in. This isn't the way I want to live. This isn't what I believe or what I think, that they are mobilizing. We see that in so many different ways across our communities. Young people are really the reason that I am hopeful. So I think that connects maybe to one of the questions or the notes in the comments about young people. Like I am hopeful because young people are going to make things different than where we've been. So.
Yeah, like there is a question from the audience about getting interest, about bringing up generational participation. And I know like that's a big conversation, right? About like how involved are young people? Why are they involved? To how productive are they? There's probably questions about, folks of our generations too. And I would say our meaning the ladies. I don't know about Dr. Haywood, but I think, how do you think about that, Marlin, in terms of maybe your hopefulness and like, how, in your thoughts on kind of generational participation and volunteering along these lines?
Well, you know what? I think sometimes we watch the news and there's so much negativity when it comes, especially looking at the news of youth, especially minority youth. But when I'm in a room with them and I'm hearing about how they are passionate about social justice, right? They're passionate about making change within their community. A lot of them are passionate, but they don't know how to go about directing that passion and that purpose and that change. And so I feel that my purpose, right, is to help them reach that destination. Like I've been along that road, so let me show you a quicker way to get there. So you don't have to make the misturns, you don't have to, like fall down the stairs or hit your head. So I'm going to try to direct you the best way that I can. And that's up to you if you want to go that journey, if you want to go that route. But that is what keeps me hopeful when I meet people who are younger than me, a lot of times the next generation, who are just as passionate. And I'm like, I see me in them. Right. And I just told this to a group of young men that I met with yesterday. I'm like, I always wanted someone like me who I am to you all. That's what keeps me motivated. Because when I look at you all, I'm like, wow, I wish I had this in high school. I wish I had this in elementary school. And because of that, it's like, that is the motivation. That is why I'm hopeful. And they are grateful. They're appreciative. And they always say that. So that is my hope. That is my joy. And that is what keeps me going.
I mean, there's a question in the chat that's a bit complicated, but it's an important one, I think. And someone is asking if we could talk about the importance of organizations recognizing intersectionality, meaning the intersection of identities, right? Like, so how do we think about the intersections of someone's race, their religion, or their sexuality or gender, and how we engage them at different times? So we talk about this a lot at our foundation in terms of like, you know, if we're wanting to affect those who are like the most affected, like we often have to get to the intersection of identity. So sometimes that could be Black, female, queer. Sometimes that could, right? So like, how do you guys think about that in your work?
Well, I would just say real quick is that not looking at everyone the same, and I think a lot of times people make that mistake because, like you said, you might have a Black female who is queer, but that doesn't mean that she is the same as another Black female who is queer, or you might have another Black male who is Christian, or another, so it's, or you might have a white female or white male who is an atheist, right? But that does, so I think that we have to be careful in how we categorize people and not try to put everyone in the same box, and understanding that everyone has their own individual identity and respect those identities that people have. That is kind of how I feel like is what is important when it comes to different organizations. And when you try to like label everyone the same, I think that's when we kind of can get into issues that we have. Those are my quick thoughts.
Yeah. Does anyone else want to weigh in on that?
I was going to say, for us, it goes back to acknowledging the whole person and just trying to figure out what they need, individually, because that's the best way to get at the support that they need, providing that support if we're able to do that, or giving them some resources outside of maybe what we can do internally. But giving them that space to be heard and to share what their individual needs are, I think is paramount.
Valerie, you're at the Young Men's Christian Association with a female CEO. How do you engage this question?
Well, we have done some really important work over years to think about the dimensions of diversity. And it is everything, right? It allows us to really ensure that those, 250,000 people that I talked about really understand who the constituents are, and that everyone is multidimensional and multidimensional in very different ways. But that is the fabric of our society, and that is what will make us strong if we think about all of those different dimensions of diversity, being open to all thoughts, all perspectives, and allowing that to kind of drive discourse and find ways to identify commonality, right? That is actually one of the most interesting pieces of our work when you think about folks that are at the Y or kind of serving as volunteers for something. You see all kinds of people with all very different dimensions of diversity, and the one thing that they might have in common is a passion for mentoring kids, or a desire to ensure that no one goes hungry, right? All dimensions of diversity put towards something that they have as a common thing is actually a great way to bring every unique skill, every unique talent, every unique dimension towards impact.
It looks like we have time for just one more question. I'm going to wrap up these two questions in one, which is like, what are you guys looking to in the future? And I don't know, in so many ways, the future is now, but like, how are we thinking about that in the context of where we are? And if you can maybe answer that question and then like provide people with a way to talk about how you guys can be contacted for any volunteering or job opportunities at your places. We'll start with Jessica.
Tell me one more time the first part of that question.
What are you hoping for in the future? Like out of all of this, you must be, there's a future that you want to see based on all of the things you discussed today. And how can you get other people to be involved to help you get to that future? Like who, if they wanted to volunteer and be more involved with NAMI?
I'm hopeful for and looking forward to a moment in time where mental health is destigmatized. To go back to what Dr. Haywood said, that, we've seen, fortunately, more African Americans reach out to therapy during this really difficult time. But I want it to be a situation where that's a commonplace, and it's not something that's trending just because the world is so heavy, but just in everyday life, to go to a therapist to seek support is something that is encouraged and something that is looked upon as a positive thing, just like we go to our physical health for our physicians. So that's what I'm looking forward to. In regards to how people can support, our website is pretty straightforward. It's NAMI Chicago. That's NAMI Chicago.org. If they log on to the website, they'll be able to see various ways to engage with us, and we look forward to it and we welcome it.
Marlin?
So I am definitely, what I'm looking for in the future is, really a better community. Again, where we have more thriving businesses that are owned by minorities or people who actually live within the community. Where we have more home ownership within our community, and then from there, where our school systems are better. So where we have, better school system, in a place to where our kids are able to be in a better place of being educated, and then where we have more places like the YMCA. So Valerie, I love that. That, like I said, more centers, because it is needed, especially when I look at the nonprofit work that I do. We utilize those spaces, right, for after school programs for Saturday. So more spaces for our kids to go to where they don't have an opportunity to get into trouble or get into something they should not have not get into. I would say that if they wanted to really get to a place of contacting us to find out more information about our organization, so you can go to voail.org, where you can find out about information that we have going on about job opportunities and how you can also volunteer with our organization.
Super. Valerie?
All right, so I think building on both Marlin and Jessica's thoughts, I really want us to be in a place where our communities are stronger, more vibrant, healthier, and thriving, right? That's what I think we all want, because that leads us to a more stable society, right? When we have the situations that we've all described here with disparities in, access to mental health support and, housing. I mean, that's not what we want, right? We want the opposite of that. And so, my hope is that all of the work that all of us can do together, and many, many other partners that are focused on either sector issues or, anything else, are all focused on making sure that our communities can be stronger and can thrive. If you're interested in volunteering at the Y, it's ymca.org. That's our national website. And there are a few tools there, right? You can put your zip code in. It'll tell you exactly the Y that's closest to you. You can go to their website and you can look at volunteer opportunities. You can look at jobs that are available through that channel. So hoping that we'll see a lot of folks take advantage of that. And no matter how you do it, we hope, I think collectively, that you would get involved. So.
Thank you. This was wonderful. It was a very rich discussion. You guys have some very interesting perspectives. It was great to be here and to be able to share this with all of our Roosevelt friends and colleagues. And I'm just going to hand it back over to LaToya to close us out.
Thank you so much for joining us during Black History Month. You're all inspiring leaders who are making extraordinary local change. Your insights will undoubtedly encourage others to reflect and commit to supporting causes that they care about. Roosevelt is honored to have you as a part of our community, so thank you so much. To all of our guests, thank you for joining today's important discussion hosted by the Diversity Network. Our next event is on Thursday, February 17th at 1 p.m. with alumna Nairobi Wheeler. She will be discussing issues Black women face in the workplace and hair discrimination. Thank you all and have a great afternoon.